welcome back to Conversations in Becoming. This is episode 2. My name is Mickey, and this podcast is for women who are navigating life's biggest transitions and learning how to rebuild with confidence, self-trust, and a whole lot more peace. So today we're going to talk a little bit about boundaries. Boundaries is a big topic, so there are lots of planned future episodes about boundaries. But today we're going to kind of focus on why they just always seem so dang hard. They are, both to set and to honor. So for years, I am a woman of a certain age, and for most of my life, I thought the reason that I was not able to set and enforce my boundaries was because I wasn't strong enough. I thought confident women just did this every day with ease, and they could say, no, I'm not down for that, and move on with their lives. And some women can, and that's great. But it's something that they practiced. We are not born knowing how to set boundaries. And every time I tried to set a boundary, I felt guilty. I felt selfish. I was afraid that people would be mad at me, that they wouldn't love me anymore, all the things I'm sure you guys can relate. So eventually though, I realized something important. That discomfort that I was feeling, that kind of in my stomach, that was not the proof that I was doing something wrong or that I was incapable of setting boundaries. That feeling really is just proof that you're doing something different. So I've done a lot of studying and learning and focusing on boundaries. And as I really started digging into this, I realized there isn't just one reason why boundaries feel so hard. There really are quite a few things happening under the surface. So today we're going to talk about 5 of the biggest ones, and we'll see if any of these sound familiar to you. I bet they will. So the first one, boundaries feel so uncomfortable because they are challenging your old survival patterns. That's a big one. Guilt is the echo of old habits dying. So most of us learned early on that there were acceptable and unacceptable ways of behaving. Particularly those of us women who are now in our 50s, our 60s, or beyond. We were always taught, in most homes, I guess I shouldn't say always, in most homes, we were taught that little girls should be quiet, they should be agreeable, don't rock the boat, don't disagree, don't do anything to disappoint anybody, make sure that you are keeping everyone else happy. But those were not our personality traits. Those weren't things that we were born with. They were survival strategies. So when you have spent years, sometimes decades, believing that approval equates to safety, boundaries don't feel empowering, at least not when you first try to start using them. They feel scary. They feel dangerous, and that's a really powerful realization. And it explains so much about why so many of us struggle as adults. Things that were drilled into us as little girls, they tend to stay with us for a really long time, and maybe forever. So when my sister and I have 3 sisters, one that's fairly close in age, when the 2 of us were little, my mom drilled into our heads, we do not get into her purse, right? If we wanted gum, if we wanted a quarter, we brought her purse to her. So even as we became adults and my mom got sick and she would say, just grab that pen out of my purse, or can you bring me that 20 that's in my purse? We would not put our hands in her purse. We always brought the purse to her. And it's just something that was so deeply ingrained that the thought of putting my hand inside my mom's purse was, I don't even know, like I just couldn't do it. So we all have things like that. And that was a cute story, obviously, but there are other things that are damaging to us. So those are the kinds of things that tend to hold us back from setting the boundaries that we truly need for ourselves. Number two, your nervous system doesn't really know yet that you are safe, right? It has been programmed your entire life, particularly when you were young, which is when a lot of those patterns are developed, to do only the things that kept you safe. This discomfort is my nervous system learning safety in honesty. So what are some of the things that maybe you experience when you try to set boundaries after an entire life of not doing it? So some of the things you might feel, some of the things that I feel, maybe a tightness in your chest. You might have a little bit of an upset stomach. You might feel a little bit of anxiety or a lot of anxiety. I know depending on the boundary that I'm setting and the situation and the people, I might just feel a little anxiety, or it might be really heavy anxiety that's practically crippling to me. And you might have really racing thoughts. So what are some of those things that you guys have experienced when you try to set a boundary for the first time, or when you first start setting boundaries? So when we feel these things, a lot of us, the reaction is to automatically go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. That was wrong. No, that is not what that means. That really is just your nervous system reacting to something that's unfamiliar to it. If you are not used to putting up boundaries and honoring those boundaries, it's going to be really hard at first. And your nervous system is going to fight against that to make sure that you stay safe. So when I was growing up, I was always taught to keep the peace. I'm the oldest of 4 girls. I was always taught to keep the peace. Like, don't disagree with anyone else. Don't rock the boat. Definitely do not stand up for myself. I don't know how that started, but it has affected me to this day. So after years of learning to prioritize everyone else's needs over your own, it's no wonder that boundaries feel so hard. It goes so much against the core of how you were raised and how you were brought up and the things that you believe. I'm saying that because most of us, I don't think, really believe them. I don't really believe that I shouldn't stand up for myself, but my nervous system says, oh my gosh, don't make waves. You're going to cause a problem. And we don't want to do that, right? So it's really hard. But that hesitancy, that inability to stand up for myself and speak my own truth, that lasted well into my adult life, and I do still have a lot of issues with it. I was married for almost 22 years, and for probably at least the first 10 years of our marriage, I did not feel comfortable enough to express my needs to him and feel safe about it. So that meant I didn't tell him if something upset me. I didn't tell him if I would prefer to do something different. I didn't tell him that, no, I don't want to host this party, or I don't want to go to this event, because I didn't want to upset the apple cart, right? And so that was obviously not good for our relationship. But after spending my entire life making sure that everybody else was safe and happy and comfortable and had what they needed, trying to set my own boundaries about what I needed, that was really hard. It made me really uncomfortable. And there were times that I literally could not get the words to come out of my mouth. It was like I was mute, like I could not say those things. I just couldn't. Number 3, we tend to mistake feelings of guilt for wrongness. So guilt doesn't always mean that you're doing something wrong. So one of the most important things that I've learned through this whole process is that guilt and wrongness are not the same things. Sometimes you feel guilty, and all that means is that you are leaving an old identity behind. That guilt is not, you do feel guilty, but it's not guilt in the sense that you are doing something that you shouldn't be doing. And it's really hard to get past that. So maybe you finally decline some invitation you've always said yes to that you never wanted to do, but you said yes from some feeling of obligation. You finally tell your family no when they ask if you can host the 4th of July event, even though it leaves you frustrated, resentful, and exhausted because nobody helps you. You say no to babysitting your grandchildren because while you love those little monsters dearly, of course we do, sometimes you just need time for yourself, and that is okay. The first few times that you set a boundary, you're most likely going to feel guilty. You are going to feel like you've done something wrong. You are going to try to soften what you say. You're going to try to backtrack a little bit. You may end up just saying, you know what, never mind, I can do it. That's normal. We all do it when we're learning, when we are going through this experience the first time or 10 times or 20 times. Who knows? It depends on the level of attachment that you have to these things, and then so therefore the level of guilt that you're going to feel when you say no. However, if you do feel guilty, like I said, most of us do, if you do, that does not mean that you have done something wrong. That does not mean that you've made the wrong choice. That does not mean that you should say yes, or you should babysit, or you should go to that party that you hate. That's not what that means at all. It just means you are practicing a new tool where you have made the decision to put yourself first. And that decision was made to protect your own peace and space and time. So the fourth thing, some people liked your lack of boundaries. They benefited from it, right? Some people benefited from your lack of boundaries. That happens all the time. So, how many of you guys can relate to that, right? Your children are used to you saying, hey mom, I'm bringing the kids by. Okay, even though you wanted to take a nap, you wanted to go shopping, you wanted to sit and do nothing. It's not that you have other plans to do something. Your other plans may have been to do nothing, and those are fine and they are valid. But these people are used to you saying, sure, I'll babysit, I'll take on more work, I'll work on Saturday, I'll stay late, I'll come in early, I'll this, and this. Whatever it is. People are used to you just saying okay and being agreeable, and they start counting on that. And so when you finally start setting boundaries, they get really upset. They can get really upset. So, not everybody is going to celebrate this growth that you are going through. Even though this is a good thing, not everybody's going to celebrate that. So some people, as I said, they were really comfortable with that version of you who always said yes. And this is not because they're bad people. I'm not suggesting that they are deliberately taking advantage of you. Some might be, of course, but in general, people they struggle when something about you changes the dynamic. When something you changes the dynamic between you, some people just don't know how to respond to that, and they don't know how to react to that, and they don't always react in the best way. So you might get people who guilt trip you, right? They will call you selfish or accuse you of no longer loving them. Neither of those is true. Maybe they'll give you the silent treatment. Maybe they'll just think, okay, I'll just stop communicating until you go back to saying yes to what I want, and then we can go back to normal. No, again, those are their choices, and you still need to honor your own boundaries, because that is what's going to set up that relationship for success in the future. So you most likely will get some pushback. People are going to tell you that you're wrong. They're going to wonder what changed. They may blame it on somebody new in your life or something new in your life. Well, what happened to you? What happened with you? Is this because of that new boyfriend you have? Is he putting ideas in your head? You weren't like this before you started going to that new church or therapist or coach or whatever, right? So again, people, for the most part, they're not trying to hurt you. They just don't know how to respond to your new way of handling your own life. And that's on them. It is not on you. These people, they're not evil. Probably most of them. They're not evil. But because the dynamic changed and now they don't understand it. And some of them don't want to understand it because they just want things to go back to normal, right? The normal where everything worked out in their favor. So one of the things that can be difficult for people, this distinction, boundaries are not walls, right? We're not putting up a wall to keep everybody out. That is not the goal. So I really like this distinction because sometimes I feel like it's hard to see the difference, particularly if you're in that stage where you're feeling guilty about setting a boundary. Walls are meant for keeping everybody else out and keeping you in. It's a hard separation. Boundaries, when you set boundaries for your time and your space and your peace, those boundaries are going to teach those people in your life how they can come inside, how they can be in your life and be respectful. Walls are going to close you off to everything and leave you lonely and unappreciated. But boundaries are going to show other people what you need to feel safe in that relationship. And that is a very, very important distinction. We don't want to shut people out. We need people. People need us, right? We are very community-driven creatures. We need other people in our lives, but we need those people to respect our time and our peace and our boundaries. So a wall, it's going to say, get out, stay out, go away. But a boundary says, here's how you can come closer and we can both be happy. Okay, so we are to today's reflection question. So before we finish up, I want to leave you with this question. Where in your life right now is guilt keeping you from honoring your own boundaries? Where is it stopping you from maintaining those healthy boundaries? So as we finish up today, I just want to say, if boundaries are feeling uncomfortable for you right now, I want you to hear this. That discomfort that you're feeling, that is not proof that you did something wrong. It's not proof that you set an unrealistic boundary. It's not proof that you shouldn't be setting those, right? The guilt you might be feeling, that's not because you're selfish. And that anxiety that maybe you feel in your stomach or in your chest, that doesn't mean you're not a kind person. Not at all. Sometimes those feelings that you're having, that is just evidence that you are becoming the kind of person who no longer abandons herself to make everybody else comfortable. And that is a beautiful thing. If no one has told you this lately, you are allowed to take up space in your own life. You are allowed. It's okay. If today's episode resonated with you, I would really love to hear from you. You can follow me at Soft But Savage Method, both on Facebook and Instagram, or on my website, Empowerment Journey with Mickey, where I help women navigate life's biggest transitions with more self-trust, stronger boundaries, and a whole lot more peace. So until next time, keep becoming.